Good morning, August 9th, I think. Just got myself a cup of coffee, do my best Scott Adams impression. That's for you, Scott, if you're watching. Doubt he is. He doesn't. He's got enough followers, he doesn't have to worry about the likes of me. But it's about 7:45 in the morning. I've been awake since about 3:30. Woke up in the middle of the night and couldn't get back to sleep, mulling over all the stuff I was reading yesterday, and then this thought came to my mind, as they do in the middle of the night, and I had to jot it down, and that sort of grabbed my head, and I couldn't get back to sleep after that. And it's a question, and it goes like this: what school of groupthink has hijacked your mind? Who have you allowed, and how and why did you allow them to do your thinking for you? Who's decided, who have you allowed to make a guinea pig out of you for their social experiment? And it sort of got thinking about this when I was reading an article by somebody I'd never heard of before yesterday. Her name is Suzanne Venker. Quite an interesting lady. And she, by the sounds of it, she's a writer, and particularly on women's issues. And I guess she knows a lot of women whose personal and private lives are pretty messed up. And this is what she says in this article: "These are real women. I'm not making them up. And there are thousands more just like them. Their lives are a hot mess for one reason. They were feminists' guinea pigs." And she goes on to say, "Feminists claim to speak on behalf of women, but it's all a ruse. Feminists couldn't care less about women." The feminist thing is not really what I'm thinking about at the moment. It was that one line that just pulled me up short. They were feminists' guinea pigs. We'll talk about the feminist thing maybe, and the mgtow thing, which is a male response to it. I'll talk about that in another video. It's more the idea that they were guinea pigs. They've found themselves guinea pigs, and their lives were a mess. And that just led me thinking about the wider question. Have you allowed yourself to be a guinea pig for anybody else's experiment? The only way they could find out was to test you. And your life is a mess, or not. You're not happy because you allowed somebody else to do your thinking for you. I can think back to when I was in my 20s. When you're in your 20s, you're trying to figure out how the hell the world works. And if you haven't got a lot of self-confidence, which I didn't at the time, it's you're looking around for somebody else who does have a lot of self-confidence and seems to have it all figured out, and you hand them over control of your head. It can get you into it didn't get me into a lot of trouble. I was fairly fortunate, I think. I was able to get my way out of it. But I think it's the kind of thing that happens to just about everybody, at least at some point, when you're trying to figure out who you are, how the world works, what your place in the world is. You're very happy to hand over control of your head to somebody else who seems to gives you all the answers, especially if they tell you what you want to hear. That's a clue. If they tell you what you want to hear and you buy into it wholeheartedly, yeah. There's a few other clues, though, whether or not you sold your soul to somebody else, and you've turned yourself into, from human being into guinea pig. Number one, they don't allow you to question them or influence them. No. You're buying into their philosophy wholeheartedly. That's a clue. Another clue is if, when you start to think about, when you start to question anyway, maybe they can sense, oh, they're getting slippery. They're thinking of falling off the wagon. And they start to threaten you or attack you or mock you. And the third clue is if, when you actually do go to abandon them, you suffer an awful lot of social loss. You lose most of your friends and your social support network. Yeah, okay. Well, that's a clue that you've bought into the wrong groupthink. In which case, of course, the right thing to do is lose the friends anyway. You don't really want friends like that, do you? There's a great book called The True Believer. There it is. That one right there. Eric Hoffer, brilliant, fantastic writer. He was a completely self-educated manual labor worker in the 50s and 60s. Well, I think earlier than that. Wrote that book, and he died not too long thereafter, I think. Fascinating read. There's one phrase that shows up in that book time and again. It's a group of, or it's a category of people he calls the frustrated. The people who are unhappy, dissatisfied, convinced that somebody else out there is keeping them down. And it's very, very easy for somebody who is less than scrupulous and has learned some mind control techniques to come along and take control of those people. They come up with a framework that appears to solve all their problems. Marx was one such character. I'm not sure that he was the mind control guy. Maybe he wasn't actually. He was the philosopher and the thinker and the writer. But the one who came along and really did manage to control an awful lot of people would have been Lenin. And that was a social experiment. He needed a large group of guinea pigs to run his social experiment on. And whether he reached any conclusions about his social experiment or not, or whether Stalin did, I'm not sure. But what was pretty obvious with the Gulag Archipelago was that it was a complete failure. And it took a long time for that to be recognized widespread. So who have you allowed to do your thinking for you? Take your mind back. Give it up to no one. There's almost definitely some school of thought that's got hold of your mind. I'm not sure that it's possible to have no schools of thought that occupy our minds at all. But the clue is, does the school, does the person allow you to question them and to influence them and maybe to influence the whole school of thought? If they do, well, that's not so bad. That's okay. Because you haven't really given up control. You've just learned something you didn't know before. But if they don't allow you to question, if they take over every aspect of your life, your friends, your social support network, your mind, get out. Kirk out.